to the PhD Mommy's Journey podcast with Bridgette Ojo,
an educator and scientific researcher who also happens to be your number one fan. This podcast is for millennial mommypreneurs who strive to be the best versions of themselves every single day. If you're a millennial mom interested in learning more about mindset, motherhood, and motivation, then this is the podcast for you.
Hello there, and welcome back to the PhD Mommy's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bridgette Ojo, Navy sailor, girl mom, educator, and founder of the PhD Mommy. I'm living proof that you can rewrite your story, walk through hard seasons, and still become the woman God created you to be. On today's episode, we are continuing our series from the book written by Dr. Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. Today's episode is based on Rule 11. Do not bother children when they are skateboarding. Now, before we dive into this rule, I want to start with the Merriam-Webster Dictionary definition of courage. Courage is defined as mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. That means courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to move despite fear. Here's what I think many people misunderstand courage. They think courageous people are fearless people. No. Courageous people simply refuse to let fear become their God. This episode is all about risk, boldness, discomfort, and why playing safe for too long slowly kills the very parts of you that were meant to come alive. Because when you live an overly cautious life, you stop growing, you stop evolving, you stop discovering what you're actually capable of. And one thing I've learned throughout my life, from losing over 180 pounds to joining the Navy at 32, to going through combat school, my dissertation defense, surgery recovery, and building this podcast is this. Everything that transformed my life required courage first. Not certainty, not confidence, courage. So let's dive in. Let me start with something bold. Playing it safe doesn't serve anyone. Not you, not your future, not your children, not your calling. And I think one of the greatest lies society teaches people is that safety should be the ultimate goal. Can I challenge you for a minute? Some people are safe and still miserable. Safe and still empty. Safe and still deeply unfulfilled. Because the truth is, you cannot create an extraordinary life while worshiping comfort. At some point, you have to risk looking foolish. At some point, you have to risk failing publicly. At some point, you have to stop waiting for certainty and trust yourself enough to move anyway. One of the biggest mindset shifts that I've had recently is this. Fear is expensive. Fear delayed opportunities. Fear kept me silent in seasons where I should have spoken. Fear made me overthink things that required action. And the crazy thing is, Most of the things I was afraid of either never happened or weren't nearly as bad as I imagined. Meanwhile, the opportunities that I almost missed because of fear, those were real. Starting the PhD Mommy's Journey podcast was terrifying because when you put your thoughts, your voice, and your story online, you expose yourself. People can criticize you, judge you, misunderstand you, project onto you. And y'all, I will be honest. There were moments where I questioned myself. I wondered, what if nobody listens? What if people think I'm doing too much? What if I sound stupid? What if I fail publicly? But eventually I realized something so powerful. The people who build impactful lives are usually willing to be seen trying, even before they feel fully ready. There are over 50,000 downloads on this podcast. 50,000. And sometimes I sit back and think, what if fear had stopped me from pressing record the first time? What if I had chosen comfort over calling? This podcast became proof that betting on yourself changes your life. I believe there are women listening to this podcast right now, women who have businesses that haven't been launched, books that haven't been written, podcasts that haven't been recorded, ministries that haven't started, dreams that haven't been pursued. Not because you aren't capable, but because you've become emotionally attached to safety. Not because you lack talent, but because you're too emotionally attached to safety. As many of you guys know, I am in the military, specifically the Navy, and joining the Navy changed me mentally in ways I never expected. Because one thing military life teaches you very quickly is this: fear is normal. Every warrior feels fear. Every service member feels fear. Every person stepping into something bigger than themselves feels fear. The difference is not whether fear exists. The difference is whether you obey it. Before joining the military, I view fear completely different. I thought fear meant stop, turn around, maybe this isn't for you. But the Navy taught me something completely different. Fear is often just feedback. It's feedback that you're stretching, growing, expanding, becoming. Because if your dreams don't intimidate you a little, they probably aren't big enough. And one thing military culture has taught me is the concept of burning the ships. Meaning, there's no retreat. There's no backup plan. No running back to comfort. You move forward, you adapt, you overcome. Historically, warriors would literally burn their ships after landing on enemy territory, so there was no option except to fight and survive. That lesson changed my life forever. Because when you remove retreat as an option, you discover how powerful you actually are. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop asking, what if I fail? And you start asking, what happens if I never try? The Navy also taught me warrior toughness, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And this is because toughness is not pretending fear doesn't exist. Toughness is functioning despite fear, showing up despite fear, leading despite fear, trying despite fear. One thing I noticed very quickly was this. Some of the strongest people I've met in the military, they were disciplined people. People who understood I can feel fear and still execute. That's real courage. And I think many people are waiting to feel emotionally comfortable before they pursue purpose. But purpose rarely feels comfortable in the beginning. I mean, think about it. The gym is uncomfortable. Leadership is uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. Risk is uncomfortable. Transformation is uncomfortable. But discomfort is not destruction. Sometimes discomfort is evidence that your life is expanding. And one thing I've realized is this. Fear is not always a warning sign to stop. Sometimes it's confirmation that you're finally moving in the direction that matters. Now, let's talk about something controversial. You have to become dangerous. And no, I don't mean cruel. I mean capable, disciplined, focused, strong, calculated. Jordan Peterson often talks about this, that weak people are not automatically virtuous. Being incapable is not morality. True virtue is being powerful enough to do damage, while choosing discipline and control instead. I've come to believe that many women have been conditioned to stay agreeable, to stay quiet, to avoid ambition, to avoid confrontation, to avoid becoming too much. But life respects strength. Motherhood requires strength. Leadership requires strength. Military life requires strength. Transformation requires strength. And one thing I've learned through weight loss, combat school, surgery recovery, dissertation defense, and this entire journey is this. You cannot build a powerful life while remaining emotionally fragile. At some point, you have to stop trying to be harmless and start becoming capable. Everything that transformed my life started with risk. Joining the Navy, risk. Losing 180 pounds, risk. Getting skin removal surgery, risk. Starting this podcast, risk. Defending my dissertation, risk, risk, risk. And the crazy thing is, every time I took a bigger risk, my life expanded. I recently saw a quote that said, taking greater risk in life increases the probability for a higher return. And let me tell y'all, I know that's true because I've personally lived it. Because when you bet bigger on yourself, you grow bigger too. Playing safe never changed my life. Taking courageous actions did. And I think many people are waiting for permission to go after what they really want. But sometimes the permission slip is simply deciding, I refuse to keep living beneath my potential. One thing that's been hitting me deeply lately is how many times in the Bible God says, do not be afraid, over and over and over and over again. Why? Because fear is one of the greatest blockers of purpose. Fear keeps people average. Fear keeps people silent. Fear keeps people stuck in environments they've outgrown. Fear keeps people attached to comfort instead of calling. Here's what walking with God has taught me. Faith has never been passive. Faith moves. Faith builds. Faith risks. Think about it. Noah built before the rain. Peter stepped onto water. David fought Goliath. Esther risked her life. God constantly calls people into situations that require courage. And I think some people are praying for extraordinary lives while refusing to take extraordinary risks. Defending my dissertation was one of the most vulnerable moments of my life. Because when you defend years of work, you expose your mind. You expose your ideas, your research, your effort, and there's always a possibility of criticism. But one thing I realized during that process is this. The women who become extraordinary are usually willing to be seen trying. Even if they stumble, even if they're nervous, even if they don't have everything figured out, today I can confidently say this. I would rather risk embarrassment pursuing greatness than spend my life wondering what could have happened if I had been brave enough to try. Let me leave you with this. You are not here to live a tiny, cautious, emotionally padded life. You are here to grow. You are here to build, to evolve, to risk, to become. And yes, you might fail sometimes. You might fall. You might embarrass yourself. You might lose. But you will always discover parts of yourself that comfort can never reveal. Because confidence is built through evidence, and evidence comes from action. So stop waiting to feel fearless. Move anyway. Bet on yourself anyway. Speak anyway. Build anyway. Risk anyway. Because the life you want is probably sitting on the other side of the risk you keep avoiding. If you remember one thing from today's episode, let it be this. The greatest tragedy isn't failure. It's potential. Potential that never got used because fear convinced someone to stay safe. The goal isn't to eliminate fear. The goal is to become the kind of woman who keeps moving forward while fear is sitting in the passenger seat. So get back on the skateboard and have the time of your life. Keep riding until the wheels fall off. If this episode spoke to you, do me a favor. Follow me on Instagram at the PhD Mommy Life for real-time updates, daily empowerment, and behind the scenes from my journey. Download my free 30-day gratitude journal. It will shift your mindset fast. And most importantly, it will keep you anchored in truth. Subscribe, download this episode, leave a review, and share it with a mom, a sister, or a friend who's ready to stop playing it safe and finally bet on herself. Because around here, we don't play small, we don't stay silent, and we never stop. Thank you for listening to the PhD Mommy's Journey podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Bridgette Ojo. Until next time, keep going and never stop.